Henry Cunningham, a typical 16-year-old Carndonagh youth. I'm privileged today to be asked to introduce the preface to the drama by the Playhouse on the story of a fellow Carndonagh youth, Henry Cunningham, who went off to work in August 1973 and never came home. Using theatre to explore truth and healing with theatrical elements, revealing a fight for justice, a battle of endurance, a reveal of the web of complicity that smothers truth, collusion, a failure of state and church, no communication, no contact, a quest for justice, the pining grief and the sorrowful desire. Surely something will come. The long fruitless passing of time, yet the resolve, we're not going to let them beat us. Bravery, strength and dignity, inspiring strength and empathy. Paul O'Connor, Pat Finucane Centre, and sure enough it does.
Robert Cunningham leans against the kitchen island in his home. It's 45 years since his brother Henry Cunningham was murdered. He cannot speak of it without sobbing. A typical 16-year-old young fella. There's no difference to any 16-year-old today, the same.
Herbie Cunningham, now wheelchair-bound with MS, leads the storytelling, recalls their life before Henry was killed. We go up to the school's football pitch in the evenings. Two teams. We call them the up-the-roads versus the lower-roads, know what I mean? We've a full team nearly every evening of the week. If the weather's good and you've your work done about the house, you up and play away at football. That's typical of Henry now. There's a cinema in Carndonagh too, Colgan Hall. We go in maybe twice a week. My mother gives us the 1 and 6 it is to get in. That's the old money. Up to the balcony, you pay half a crown. We walk into Carn too. You might get a lift, you might not.
Between the dances, the pictures, probably that's all any of us has at that time, aye.
The Lilac Ballroom opens in Carn 1970.
I started playing in a band myself in 73, June that year. I'm 45 years in the music myself. I'm playing in the band that night. That's why I go into the back of the van to sleep.
Aye. Henry's left school and come to start work with us. He's only working with us maybe 3 or 4 months at this stage.
Paul O'Connor from the Pat Finucane Centre. He also helps the Cunninghams in their quest for justice. Doing what?
Labouring, and as you know yourself, there's not too much money about either.
Aye, money's small that time.
Henry runs about with a fella called Paddy from Carndonagh. He's a big contractor now in the north.
Yeah.
And there's another fella, Noel, a neighbour. The three of them run about together.
Same as any other 16-year-old, no different.
Aye, he goes out with a girl from Mallinhead, isn't she?
That's right. Deary family. He's meeting her that night too. Lilac Ballroom in Carn.
Where are you working?
Up in Belfast, Glengormley.
In Glengormley. We work for a crowd in Derry and they've work up in Belfast, so we drive up there in the van every day. Must have been up there nearly 4 months at the time.
Aye, 4 months.
Nobody ever bothers us. Nobody ever comes to us and says, boys, you shouldn't be here. If they had, I would have been away. Never get no warning. We don't know to this day why it's done. Nobody ever claims responsibility, never was, no nothing. Where do we start? I still have a memory of it just the same as it happens yesterday evening. I still see it as clean as day.
And it's the loveliest day in Belfast too.
Sun shining, not a storm nor one.
A normal day.
6 of us going home from work and coming up the M2 motorway. It's the first evening Henry sits in the passenger seat. He's always in at the back.
I always sit in the front, but this evening I says I'll rest as I'm going playing in the band that night.
Going up the motorway, and next thing at one of the flyovers, before I even see the men at all I hear is this wild, unearthly gunfire. And just as the hole went on the windscreen, I see 3 men on the bridge, 2 or 3 yards between each one. I can actually see flames flying out of the guns and the noise. Henry shouts, I'm hit, and he just slumps over. Near enough, his head nearly touches mine. But the bullets, they went through my jumper there. That's how close I am to it. And if they get me, they get everybody. I think they're all dead in the back. I'm roaring, turning around, roaring, not knowing as none of them's answering me. It keeps my foot to the pedal, get as far away as possible.
In case they're coming after us.
I drive for 3 miles. I can go no further because of the busted wheels, so I pull onto the hard shoulder. Another fella, Packy, in the back of the van. The bullets come down through the roof and down into his cheekbone. Between hitting the van and ricocheting off the van, I think, 32, 33 bullets hits her altogether. Henry's killed right out. The boy got one in the heart and one in the leg. So, and it's just terrible that evening, to be truthful. We get out of the van and try to stop people. One fella and a girl stops in a wee sports car.
Thank God them people stopped.
We cut him through a big thick hedge at the side of the motorway, the whole lot of us. I have to leave Henry in the van. I want them to stay and try to get Henry out, and they say no. Come on, he's dead. We cut him through a hedge, run through a field, and run to the nearest house.
And then I never saw nothing as quick.
By the time we get over to the house, the police and army and all's there.
We weren't at the house, and they're there, like that. So where did they come out of?
I drove for 3 miles and stopped randomly. That's what beats me. Know what I mean? Normally when you've an accident, you're kept waiting. There's no waiting this evening. Wherever they are, they're watching. And how they get to that house, they must have come in another road. There's no roads off the motorway.
And lucky enough, the woman at the house, she's a nurse, and it's her helps Packy, the fella got the bullet through the cheekbone.
We never get back to thank them people.
Then we're in Antrim police station. That's where we're taken. We're each interviewed separately.
I'm cut by flying glass. Cuts me face, me neck and hair. It's in me shoes, cuts me feet. At the police station, they give me a tetanus injection. We're taken care of. Offered tea and that, you know.
Aye, nothing strange.
We never think. I never think. It's only a day or two afterwards it comes into my head the security forces have something to do with it.
What makes you think it?
Because I'm telling you, they're there before we even get to the house.
Henry's still in the van, but there's nothing new we can do for him. The police and the ambulance arrive and they take the van into the barracks.
We're not home to Carndona that night till 2:30 in the morning.
Aye, and Tommy, he drives up to Antrim police station to pick us up.
There's riots with the second internment anniversary and Toonbridge is closed, so we go via Coleraine.
I phone and tell Annie.
Our sister.
I tell Annie, and then in case the news comes on the TV, we get the woman who owns the post office to go up and sit with my mother until Annie gets there.
And believe it or not, our local guard, John, and he'd be up in the house regular, stops my father in the tractor on the road and tells him,
"Your son Henry was killed this evening working in Belfast."
The next day, we bring Henry home in the hearse. Believe it or not, we get to the army barracks at Kilmore. Next thing, this motorbike jams in between our car and the hearse. My father's in the car with me. That motorbike sits the whole way back from Kilmore to about 200 or 300 yards down from our own house.
I'm in with John in his car, and I mind John saying,
"What's that bugger doing trying to jam in there?"
He knows exactly where we live, and that's the evening after the shooting.
I see where he stops, down from our house.
The historical inquiry team investigate, and they know who the boy is. They interview him, but they don't tell us who he is. He lives in a nationalist area in Derry.
I still have the rage in my head since.
Aye. The HCT report says they interviewed this fella, and he admits it's his motorbike.
The inquest's held 3 weeks later.
By law, the coroner's not supposed to hold an inquest until the police investigations have been completed.
I'm 21 at the time. I don't understand the way they work it.
What's reflected in the HET report, in order to keep this family quiet, give them an inquest. It's just a cursory inquest because the police haven't finished their inquiries. Just get it over with. So you're saying to have done something?
It's an open verdict.
It's against the law. Did you give evidence at the inquest?
No. Somebody stood up and muttered some words. I don't even know what he said.
And away we go down the road again.
So none of yous that are in the van are called to give evidence?
We don't know what an inquest is.
We're 20 and 21.
Nobody tells us we're going to Antrim Town Hall for an inquest. We don't know what we're going in for. When it's over, they leave and we leave.
In and out in, say, 10 minutes.
It's still raw yet.
It just destroys my mother and father, honest to God.
Especially my father. He doesn't live that long after Henry's killed. He dies the next year, in 74. It just annoys him that much.
Like Henry's murdered, our van's shot at over 30 times and nobody blinks an eye.
No investigation, no articles about it or anything.
Well, that book comes out, Lost Lives.
30 years later, we had to wait 30 years. I'm working in the Long Tower in Derry, and one of the parishioners coming out from Mass, he says to me,
Herbie,
he knows I have a brother shot.
there's a priest in there from down the country, and do you know what he's with him?
The new book, Lost Lives, is only out at that time.
After Mass, it'd be worth your while to go on and see if your brother's name's in it.
And sure enough, I haven't many pages to open till I come to Henry Cunningham, murdered by the UVF, Loyalist paramilitaries. That's when we decide to come to the Pat Finucane Centre for help.
My mother and father die without knowing for sure. And the other sad thing about it is we know now that the moderator of the Presbyterian Church at the time would have known who done it. He doesn't write one thing to my mother or father.
He definitely knows.
Not one word or letter or anything from our own church.
Because they know, which we don't know. They know it's Loyalists done it.
Well, it's in all the papers in Belfast the next day. Presbyterian from Donegal. It's black and white for him.
The moderator should have said to the local minister at the time, he never comes or sends a letter of sympathy to my mother or father. It's the least he could do.
Then my mother and father wouldn't have died without knowing. Although my mother wonders, but my father never speaks about it. Now, how can the leader of the church do something like that? Turn their back? It's why I have nothing to do with religion. I just completely walk away from it. Can't even think it. My father used to hire a car for us to take us to Sunday school. We carry on with our lives. We know no better.
In fairness, the local priest at the time, he lifts £100 down to my mother and father, to show support. The Cairn community was great.
Aye, well, the community's all still behind us because people around here know.
The Historical Inquiries team report states that the guns are stolen in a raid from an Ulster Defence Regiment, a UDR Territorial Army base in Lurgan in October 1972.
People say we should have known it was a UVF all along. Whether we know or we don't know, we've nothing to base anything on.
According to British intelligence, the raiders are familiar with the armoury and the security arrangements. One of them has part of the password to get into the armoury. This raid possibly involves the Glenanne gang in mid-Ulster, and it's of the British Army's view that there's collusion between the UDR, the UVF and the RUC in this raid. People working at the barracks are involved in the raid.
And that's where the gun that killed Henry comes from.
Yeah, the same gun is used to kill a man in a building site near Glengormley.
We've since met the family of that man.
This is now a lead case in a civil case against the Ministry of Defence because the document shows a kind of willful neglect of the UDR armouries and the weapons that are disappearing at an alarming rate over a period of time. In November 72, the Army informs the Ministry of Defence that no weapons were stolen the previous week, which tells you a lot about the level of stolen weapons.
We're young at the time, and nobody takes responsibility for Henry's murder, so it leaves us in the position. We can't turn around and say it's the IRA or loyalists who done it. Nowadays, people local would have told me.
I could have told you the day of the funeral. Loyalists done it.
But nobody did tell us.
But I know a couple of days after Henry's killed, and nobody listens to me. There's one saying,
It's the IRA.
and I said, definitely isn't the IRA, because the police and army are there like that there. If it's the IRA, you don't get the police or army there that quick. Then we get a bit older, know what I mean? We say to ourselves, we're not going to let them beat us. We work all over Northern Ireland. Nobody ever bothers us or comes near us the same.
Our government, the Irish government, let us down big time. Henry's a citizen, he was murdered, and they know the next day as well because they all work through one another. But it's the wrong government, Fine Gael. Oh, they were always knowing, always big into the unionist side, blue shirts. Same Irish government today, does nothing then, and now 45 years later, still does nothing. When the Finucane Centre starts looking, there isn't any document of any kind in any file in Dublin that states there was a Donegal person from Carndona who's murdered in Northern Ireland.
Kept no record at all.
The RUC should have conducted interviews with everybody in the van. We now know from intelligence that the RUC know the weapons used to shoot the van and kill Henry are stolen, where they're from, and who's taken them. The RUC have firm evidence that it's a UVF attack. They know from the ballistics within 48 hours, and the family are never told.
No.
No follow-up ever over the years.
No.
No attempt to make contact through the guards.
No contact from any police, guards or RUC from the night it happened.
No.
45 years now, August gone. We know now that the UVF took us all to be Catholics because of our Donegal Reg. There's myself and Herbie. There's 2 other brothers, and there's 2 passed on now. And the rest of them? No, they don't want this whenever we start looking into it. Well, I take the biggest rap because Herbie has MS. Although Herbie's backing's the same, but it's not going to stop us. The family split, and still is. It would have been better for us all if we were
Singing off the one hymn sheet. Better for everybody. My mother did say to me,
It'll not happen probably in my time, but surely something will come before you leave this world.
and sure enough it does.
It'll not happen probably in my time, but surely something will come. It will not happen this world probably in my time. Not happen probably